Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Beef Up Front podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Coyle, and today I'm joined alongside my guest, Brendan O'Donnell. Brendan,
What's up, everyone?
how you been holding up with the coronavirus?
I don't know. It's been tough. Um, just basically just doing schoolwork, playing a lot of Call of Duty,
Yeah,
missing sports, but
missing sports.
that's why we're here
Yeah.
to talk about it right now, right?
Yep. So first thing, we're in the middle of basketball season. At least we should be. But we're going to take a look ahead to the off season with college basketball wrapped up a few weeks ago. Getting the March Madness was canceled. We're going to do a little NBA draft preview on some notable college names that will be going to the draft this year. So we're going to do a segment we call overrated, underrated, or just right, where I'm going to list a player, and then Brendan's going to tell me if he thinks that's overrated, underrated, or just right for his draft slot and current mock drafts. So our first prospect we're going to talk about today is Miles Powell, the guard from Seton Hall. Brendan, Miles is currently ranked as a late second round pick. Would you say that's overrated, underrated, or just right?
Um, I would definitely say that's a little bit underrated. Um, I think that he's an experienced player. He's been there for 4 years. He is 22 years old. I think that he's a guy that can help a team right away. He shoot the three ball. He shot, I think, around 40% from three. Um, yeah, so I think that's a little bit underrated. I could see him being a steal for a team late second round.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's underrated for him too. Like you were saying, he's an experienced player. He's probably Seton Hall's greatest all-time player, scored over 2,000 points. He can score the ball. The one thing he has going against him, he's like 6'2", 6'3", and he's not really like a point guard. He's more of like a scoring guy. So, but I think he could definitely be a valuable asset to a team to bring him off the bench. You know what? Let's put you in there for 15, 20 minutes a night. And he could be a guy that could average you 8, 9 points a game. And he's also got great like leadership and toughness, and that's like those are two things that coaches and GMs really like in a player. And he could be, I think, a great like leader for like a young team, maybe like Memphis, where you get him like around guys like Ja Morant or Jaren Jackson, young guys like that, or even add him to like a veteran team, kind of like the Heat, where he'll fit right into that culture.
Does he remind you of Carson Edwards a bit?
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah,
I don't know about his like long range shooting as much as Edwards, but I definitely think he could be a guy who's kind of like a microwave, like heat him right up off the bench.
probably a better defender as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so our next prospect we're going to talk about is the center from Kansas, Udoka Azubuike. Right now he's projected as a late first slash early second round pick after being one of the best big men in the country at Kansas. Would you say that's overrated, underrated, or just right?
Um, I would say that's probably just about right. I mean, every team could use a decent center that can rebound and just play in the paint. Um, I think he was probably the worst foul shooter in all of college
Yeah, he's
basketball, right?
pretty awful.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's just about right.
I agree. I think that he'll be a solid player in the NBA. Just kind of like know your role, do your job. He's
Yeah.
not
Rebound.
as athletic as this guy, but I kind of like see him kind of as a Clint Capella. Not nearly as good, but he's just going to hang around the rim. He's going to play defense. He's going to
Catch
get
lobs.
rebounds. Yeah, and catch lobs. I think he would definitely be good on a team where he's moves pretty well for his size. And if you're running in transition, you could throw it to him down the lane, catch lobs, and just hang around the rim. Because he shot 70, I think it was like 77% this year from the field, but he like didn't take a shot outside of like 9 feet. So
Yeah, I'm
obviously
looking right now.
he knows his
70,
skills.
75%.
Yeah, so that's a pretty ridiculous field goal percentage, and he's very
Yeah.
efficient. He's gonna play his game, and I think that's what a team will be looking for in this draft.
Yeah.
So the next prospect we're going to talk about is he's a forward slash center from Duke, Vernon Carey. Right now in a lot of mock drafts, he's projected as a mid to late first round pick. Would you say that's overrated, underrated, or just right?
Um, I definitely don't think it's overrated. I would say that's about right. Maybe a little underrated. From the Duke games I've watched this year, he whenever Duke needed a basket, they went to him in the low post or near the foul line. Um, I think Duke struggled a little bit to score, and he was that one guy that could get a bucket whenever they needed, whenever they were struggling. I mean, they're a great team and they're a great defensive team, but I feel like they struggled at times to score. And he seemed to be the one that they always went to. And so I think that he can be a good player um, for like a mid-round team. But I guess, yeah, that's
Yeah, so I
about
would
right.
say I agree. I think that's just about right for him. Maybe he might go in like the late part of the lottery, but I could see him going on a team where they have like an older like forward or center that has like maybe like a bad contract or an expiring contract that they're thinking about getting out and get a young guy in there. And he's definitely a low post guy that can score. He can score out the mid range and he can shoot the three ball well too, which for a big guy in today's NBA, that's like a definitely a much needed skill set.
Yeah,
One thing going against him though, he's not the most athletic or in shape guy, so he's got to work on stuff like that if he wants to really develop his game and become an impact player in the NBA. But I think he's one of the more slept on guys in this draft, and I think he could wind up having a pretty solid NBA career.
I agree.
So our next guy is one of the more prolific scorers in college basketball history. He was the Big East all-time leading scorer, and that is Marcus Howard from Marquette. Right now, he's projected as a late second-round pick. Would you say that's overrated, underrated, or just right?
This is a tough one for me. Um, I think I would say that's just about right. He obviously is, like you said, a prolific scorer. Um, very small, which is obviously a problem in the NBA. I, he, I think that he will struggle defensively. I don't, I don't know if he was a great passer, and could really get other teammates involved because I remember he was just more of a shooter and a scorer for himself. I don't know how you feel about that, but
Yeah, I think late second round pick would just be just about right. I could also see him going undrafted, just like you were saying, his size and at his size he's like 5'11", barely 6 foot maybe. He's gonna have to be a point guard, and he's not really a true point guard. He's more of a scorer. So I don't really
yeah,
know how many teams. I mean, someone will definitely give him a chance. He's one of those guys who would definitely benefit, I think, from summer league, given teams a chance to show that he could maybe run a team. But
yeah,
he definitely can shoot the ball. He's got that skill set. But the thing about him is he played at Marquette where they didn't really have many great players outside of him, and so a lot of his scoring
yeah,
was he took a lot of field goal attempts. He was a high like volume scorer. He needed to shoot a lot, and he wasn't the most efficient player. Obviously, he's still a great scorer, great player, but I don't think that he'll have the greatest NBA career.
yeah. I agree.
Uh, so the last prospect we're going to talk about for this segment is Cassius Winston, the point guard from Michigan State. As of right now, he's a projected early second round pick. And would you say it's overrated, underrated, or just right?
I think that's just about right. I don't think that he's going to be, obviously, I don't think he's going to be a star or anything like that, but he's a guy that is obviously a tremendous leader. I don't know if you remember what he played literally right after his brother died, and
Yeah.
I thought that was extremely, showed a lot of leadership, and he led that team, and they struggled a little bit this year. I know they had a bunch of injuries, but he's basically a glue guy that held it all together. Great shooter, sees the floor great. I think that's about right. I think he can help a team. I don't know about right away, but eventually I think he's just a decent
Yeah.
role player
Uh
that,
huh.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to be an early second round pick. Maybe slide into the late first would be right for him. He's a guy where I think he'll go to an established team. I was thinking he'd be a good fit for like the Sixers behind Ben Simmons when Simmons needs a blow. Because the Sixers haven't been able to find a good point guard to back up Ben since he came into the league. Or maybe even a team like the Lakers who have been running LeBron at the point for most of the year. If LeBron needs a 4 or 5 minute blow, you bring in Winston, he's not going to turn the ball over. He's going to get your team in the offense, and he can shoot the ball too. He gets his teammates involved. He's just a consummate point guard. Just he's not a very explosive athlete. Doesn't have great size, and that's the thing holding him back.
He reminds me of a little better version of Ty Jerome from Virginia.
Okay.
If you remember, yeah.
Yeah.
Just a guy that led his team, wasn't explosive, didn't score a ton, but could shoot well, distribute the ball well. So yeah. I think he's gonna help a team.
Yeah, he's one of those great like college players where he's gonna find a way in the NBA to find a role on a team.
Yeah.
So next thing we're just gonna hit on a little more of the NBA draft before we move on. Who would you pick, Brendan, as your number one prospect for this year's draft?
So I'm not in love with this draft this year. I think it's very weak, to be honest. I think the only legitimate option right now, and the one with the least amount of risk, is Anthony Edwards from Georgia. 6'5" guard, can score from all three levels of the floor. He can shoot, he can mid-range, get to the rim. So I think he's the best option right now. I don't really see anyone else being number one. I know Obi Toppin is making his way up the draft board, but I still think Anthony Edwards is the safest pick. And it looks like the Warriors might be the first pick.
Yeah. As of right now, the Warriors have the first pick, so that would be one of the things where I could maybe see him slide just because of having Clay and Steph already.
I guess Wiseman might be a good fit for there, but I'm not really sure. He could play the three, right?
Edwards, yeah. I mean, he could, but they also just traded for Wiggins. I don't know what they see in him.
Yeah, exactly.
But I agree. I think Edwards is the best prospect for this year's draft. Just like you said, he's 6'5". He's a big guard. He can score, and he's got a really good body too, which is going to help him out on defense. He's got good athleticism, and as long as he keeps developing his outside shot, I think he'll be. I don't know if he's going to be an all-star, but I think he could be like an 18 to 20 point per game guy, and that's going to help a lot of teams. A lot of teams are looking for. He couldn't. I don't think he could be like a first or second option on like a good like championship level team, but like we were saying, like maybe Golden State, like he could be like their third like go-to scorer on that offense and help them. But who would you pick as like looking at drafts and scouting reports and stuff? Who would you say would be one of your top like steals of the draft for this year? Who is a guy who's getting picked below where you think he should?
Yeah, I mean, so I look at a guy like Sadiq Bey out of Nova. He's probably a mid-round pick right now.
He's like mid-first.
Yeah, mid-first. That's what I meant. Yeah. I think whatever team that he's going to fall to is going to get a complete steal. Unbelievable shooter. Not only can he shoot, he shot 45% from three this year, which is ridiculous. And Nova takes a lot of threes, so it's not like they're wide open threes. A lot of them are very contested. He can great mid range, can finish at the rim, 6'8".
Defend.
And just won small forward of the year, I believe. So I think he's going to be a steal. I could see him sliding a little bit up as we get closer to the draft. That would be my steal of the draft.
Yeah, and I think he's one of those guys who, ever since he got to Nova, all he's done is gotten better. He was like a very underrated prospect coming in, and he's one of those guys who I was saying to you before the show. If you look at a picture of him from when he began his freshman year to now, just like the amount of like muscle mass that he put on, he's got a bigger body now that's going to be better suited for the NBA. And I think he's a guy, I agree, who he's got a lot of long-term potential, and he's just going to keep getting better.
Yeah, I'm looking at. Sorry.
No, you're good.
I'm looking at the stats right now. jumped up 8 points, went from 8 points a game to 16 in pretty much the same amount of minutes, only a couple more minutes. His 3-point percentage went up 8 points. Foul shooting went up 12. Yeah, I think
he's definitely an improving player. That's just a testament to Villanova too, just how good they are at developing players. And you see guys like Arcidiacono or Brunson or Josh Hart, like guys who've never been like the greatest athletes and stuff, but Villanova like always put in like that hard work, and that kind of carried them forward into the NBA. And that would give me a lot of faith in picking a guy like Bay, knowing that he comes from like a hardworking school like Villanova, where all right, this guy knows how to be a professional already. Let's see if he can continue to get better.
Yeah, I think Mikal Bridges might be the best example for that. Yeah,
I didn't even think about that. Amari Spellman, all those guys.
Dante.
Coming in not being that great, not like the highest ranked prospect, but panning out and finding a way in the NBA.
Yep.
My pick for my biggest draft steal is Lamar Stevens, a forward from Penn State. A lot of drafts right now have him going in the late second round. Like you said, local kid, Philadelphia from Roman Catholic. He just won Penn State's. He might be Penn State's all-time best player, in my opinion. Over 2,000 points. I think he was only 7 points shy of becoming the all-time leading scorer before the season got cut short. So that was a real shame. But he's a guy who can score, he can rebound, he can defend, and he's got a strong NBA-ready body. Yeah. And I think he'd be a great fit for a team who has all his attributes, who like they look for guys who are tough, who defend, who rebound. Like, and I was thinking maybe a team like the Pacers or a team like the Heat or like the Jazz, maybe even the Nuggets, teams like that who have just been historically over the past like 5 or 6 years, like really tough teams, grit and grind kind of guys. And I feel Stevens fits that mold. And he's a guy who I think he can continue to get better too. He's got an improving jump shot. If you look at his numbers over the years at Penn State, he's pretty much rose up every year in those categories. And he's just a solid NBA player, I think. And he's gonna be I'm not gonna say a force in the league, but he's gonna be one of those guys who we look back at this draft and you could say, how do we let him slip past us? I feel like even the Sixers could look at him. I hope they could definitely use a few like more like solid young front court players, and hopefully we don't let a local kid like that get away from us.
I agree. Yeah.
All right, we're gonna move on to our next segment. This is kind of more of a fun, opinionated one. Our favorite sports cliches. So I'll start it off. My number one favorite is on the NFL broadcast or like NFL like live stuff, shows like that. When we start to get towards like the late fall, early winter, and when the announcers ask, "Can this team win in the cold?" I've just always thought that's a funny one where it's like, oh, like we could see it with like next year with like Tampa Bay, like, oh, this is a team who's been playing down south all year in the hot, humid weather, but this week they have to travel to Chicago where it's 19 degrees with a -4 wind chill. Can this team win in the cold? I always think that's like one of the like overrated things. I remember a few years back when Eagles were hosting the Saints in the playoffs, and they're like, "Oh, Saints have never won a game like below like 32 degrees in the playoffs, like outside." And then they came and they beat us on a last-second field goal. So I think that's one of the more like overhyped things.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
The Rams get that every year too.
Yeah, it's the best when it's the warm weather teams where, if maybe even like the Dolphins, you see them improving this year. If they can potentially make a run to the playoffs, it'll be this team doesn't have a lot of experience and they're used to playing in the warm. I think you got to go with the Steelers to beat them this week, just because they're used to playing in the cold weather. I always get a good laugh when announcers start talking about that.
Yeah, it's hilarious. But all right. So my next sports cliche is when, say, a player takes a charge or does something good defensively, the announcer will go, he does all the little things right. And it's just funny how that's always said for the players that don't do the scoring. and they're
Yeah.
usually not great players, but if they do all the little things, they're perfect for the team, and that's not always the case. So I think that's a little bit overrated. I think it's funny. So that's my thing.
When you said that, I got a picture of Brad Davidson, the guard from Wisconsin, in my head, just because he's the guy always taking the charges for them and stuff. But then he also got like caught like tripping people a few times. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
kind of more one of those like gritty like white guy things, like T.J.
yeah,
McConnell, where
yeah.
the announcers usually say that.
Exactly.
Uh, so my next one, it's another football one. It's in the NFL, you win from within. I always think it's funny where people are like, you build from the center out. Yeah. Shout out to Kevin Walter. He always says that to me. My
Hmm.
dad always says to me, you win in the trenches. That's how you build the team. And being an Eagles fan, we always see Howie Roseman invest in the trenches. So I mean, I definitely do think that's a true thing, but I think it's a bit of a cliche because at the end of the day, in the NFL, you usually win if you have the better quarterback. And I feel like announcers always say, "Oh, they've been pounding the rock on him all day, 100, 150 yards, and we're only at halftime." In the NFL, you win from within, and the
Yeah.
Eagles are dominating the Cowboys on their offensive line against their defensive line. Stuff like that. I feel like that's one of those phrases that's always said when it comes to watching professional football.
Yeah. You still need a receiver, which
Yeah.
we don't have. So hopefully, in the draft we'll get someone. But all right. Well, I guess my next best sports cliche is that defense wins championships. Um, everyone says it. I guess it's
Every
true in
sport.
every sport, literally every sport. Um, I don't care if you're playing with your friends in
Yeah.
the back and on the court in the backyard, that someone will say it.
Huh.
I don't. I guess it's true in some ways. I think it's a little bit overrated, but um, I guess all in the NBA, everything's built around offense. I feel like, and I feel like the Sixers have built around the defense, and I think it's hurt them a little bit,
Hmm.
probably more than a little bit. But so yeah, that's my next one.
Yeah, if you look at like some of like the recent champions in sports, it's like the Warriors. That whole dynasty was predicated on their sharpshooting offense. So the Patriots, they've always been all right. We got Brady. We're gonna get good guys on offense around him that fit our system. Like until last year, whenever you think Patriots, you think of their offense, stuff like
Yeah,
that. So
yeah,
I think that's one of the definitely overrated sports terms. This last one is it's a thing I always find funny when I hear in Philly when especially when I listen to like sports talk radio. It's when people call in, they're like, I'm a true 4 for 4 sports fan. I bleed Sixers, Eagles, Phillies, Flyers. And then Mike Missinelli or someone will be like, oh yeah, 4 for 4. Who'd the Flyers play last night? And they'll have no idea. It's one of those
yeah,
things where like, are you really like like you can claim like you like those all those 4 teams and like you root for them, but you're not like religiously following all those 4 sports all the time. And you see things like that in like New York or like LA, stuff like that, where especially out west where you see the Rams games and the stadium's empty, or you go to a
yeah.
Chargers game and
Oof.
it's empty too. So I feel like the term 4 for 4 sports fan, like in all 4 major sports, North American sports, I think that's one of my favorite sports cliches as well.
Well, do you consider yourself a 4 for 4?
I wouldn't, because I mean I definitely follow the Sixers and the Eagles religiously. I'm a Phillies fan. I watch them, but at the same time, I don't keep up on them as much as I should. And the Flyers are kind of one of those things where, all right, the Flyers are on, or we're getting towards the end of the season. The playoffs are coming up. Let's tune in a little more. But
Yeah,
I definitely think the term 4 for 4 can't be applied to most sports fans.
yeah. I agree. Um, my next sports cliche is, I think it's funny. A team could be 17-0. They lose
Yeah.
one game. They come back on a back-to-back game, and they'll have a big win. And the guy in the interview after the game will say, we've overcome so much adversity. It's been, and I feel like every it's just so the word adversity is so it's just spoken way too much. I think it's funny how that always happens, but like
Well,
you lost one game.
yeah, I think a thing you could tie in with that too is we've overcome a ton of adversity. We just lost our starting running back last game, but we have that next man up mentality. Like it's gotta,
Yeah, yeah,
we can't let this thing stop. We gotta keep going forward. Like,
yeah.
all right, like you're at the end of the day, you're all NFL players. Like
Like the
we
backup
know we
corner will
know
get
it's
hurt, and
yeah.
they'll start talking about how all the adversity we went
Trust me,
through.
we've been staying ready. We've been staying
Yeah.
ready. We got that next man up mentality. All right, so that'll do it for our sports cliches short segment. Next, we're gonna tell. Me and Brian are each gonna tell two stories about some personal, like, funny stories that we have while playing sports. I'll start it off. When I was in seventh grade, I was playing a CYO basketball game. I played for St. David's. We were playing St. Albert's, who had Colin Gillespie, who plays point guard at Villanova now. For those of you who don't know, and I was guarding him. I was doing pretty good. He was always a very good player, but I didn't think necessarily he would be a guy who wound up at Nova. I thought he would always be like a smaller D1 guy, but he's playing well at Villanova now. But back then he was definitely the best player in our league, and I was guarding him. I was feeling confident. I was doing pretty good. I held him to like remember it was like the first half, and it was a game like we needed to win for like playoff seeding, and I held him to like 5 or 6 points in the first half, and there was like 2 seconds left, and like we deflected the ball out of bounds and they got the inbound. So I was just gonna let him like catch it and chug up a half court shot. He caught it like perfect form, catch and shoot. Like I didn't even bother guarding him because I was like, he's not gonna make it to half court shot. There he was, caught it, rose up, drained it. And I was like, oh geez, what did I do? He came out the second half, and I think I'm not even exaggerating. I think he put 30 on me, and we blew that game big, and that was a game we needed to win. But that was just one of those things where, like, whenever I watch him on TV now, it's one of those things I'll always remember, letting him torch me for 30 points in the second half after
I'm
waking him up
sure.
with that half court shot.
Yeah, I'm sure he did that to a lot of people. But
Yeah.
I have a funny story. I was playing. I've had a ton of embarrassing AAU stories, but this one I was playing this team called the True Ballers. Um, it I found out after the game that it was essentially Coach Phil's high school team, and they were very good at the time, as they're usually always very good. Um, I was more of a bench player. We had a really great team, a lot of good players around us. Um, so it's probably around the second quarter where it's like a real tight game. There's dunks, um, a lot of fans watching. It's like one of the semifinal games, I think. I don't really remember which tournament it was. So he pulls me into the game, and I get I go on the point guard, and immediately the guy with the ball pulls out, and they scream, "Mouse in the house." Everyone spreads out. He takes me right in the post. The ball, layup, get taken right out. Don't see the floor.
Didn't
Yeah,
go back
it was
in.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was fun. It wasn't fun, but
Something you always remember.
yeah, it was funny.
So this year so I played basketball in college at Misericordia. It's like a small D3 school up in northeastern PA, and we had an exhibition game against Seton Hall this year, who was a preseason top 10 team. We were hanging in there for the first few minutes. It was about the first 5 minutes of the game. It was kind of back and forth, and then Miles Powell started doing his thing and started pulling up and just crossing people over, and we eventually wound up losing the game 112-38. But I don't really know if I can even say this was a memory, but the lasting like image I have of being at the Seton Hall game. So I was in. I played. Everyone on our team played. Like so, we played. The guys on the bench played like 5 or 6 minutes. And when I was in for my 5 minutes against Seton Hall, I was like, oh, this is awesome. This is going to be something really cool. I was in the lane, and outside shot went up from 3. I was playing defense, and like I was standing vertically. I'm about 5'11", 6 foot, and I was gonna go jump up to get the rebound. Next thing
No,
I
you weren't.
know, next thing I know, I'm down on the floor, and I was like, "Oh, geez, what just happened?" I like open up my eyes. Turns out like I was standing vertically. I didn't even like bend over or jump yet. And this guy from the perimeter came in and jumped so high he kneed me in the back of the head. And I got a concussion and I was knocked out on the ground for like 5 seconds. And then when I stood up, I was like, oh well, I'm on the floor. I assumed I got fouled. So I started walking to the other end to take free throws, and I was walking down. And I was almost at the end of the court myself. And when the ref finally had to grab me and turn me around and say, no, the ball's down on this end. So I was pretty knocked out from that. And there was a video someone showed me after the game of when it happened, and I was down on the ground and I kind of like looked like a dead body. Like you could clearly tell like I was knocked out. There's just lifeless force out there. But
Jeez.
that'll be something I always remember leaving the game against Seton Hall with bad concussion.
Do you remember what player it was?
No, I honestly had no idea.
No
It
idea.
was it was
Didn't
just
review.
crazy.
Didn't review the film.
I do it was something where I didn't even remember it happened. All I remembered was waking up on the ground until someone showed me the video of the guy kneeing me in the head.
Jeez. So I guess my next pretty cool story is we in high school we were in this Christmas tournament. It was my sophomore year. Um, I didn't play much. I was kind of a role player, but we played Great Valley, and we played. We talked about him earlier, Mikal Bridges, and that was just a really cool experience. I didn't know how good he was going to be then, but we actually did a really good job defending him. I obviously didn't defend him, but um, the guys on our team did a great job, and we lost the game, but we did a real good job against him, and it was just real cool knowing that we all played against an NBA player, and we did a good job against them. So yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best things about growing up where we did. Where I mean, we went to a small school in Upper Moreland, but I mean, through AAU or travel or high school, middle school,
Yeah.
CYO games like that, played against so many kids who eventually went on to become D1 players, and some were
Yeah.
I was even able to call my teammate through like AAU. It's always cool to be able to see them on TV, like doing well and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
We're gonna continue talking a little basketball here. Me and Brennan each ranked our top 5 college basketball players. We said of our lifetime, but we did it post 2009 NBA draft because that was kind of more when we started like really knowing guys and tuning in more. So guys like Steph Curry or like a Kyle Singler or John Shire, like guys like Johnny Flynn, guys like that who were definitely really good players, but it was kind of before our time where we were really into college basketball. And we also eliminated picking guys like Anthony Davis or Zion Williamson who were one and done prospects. We picked guys who had more so like established like in like decorated college careers.
More
So
accolades.
I'll start it off with my 5th ranked guy. I have Frank Kaminsky, the big center from Wisconsin a few years back. Just looking him out on the court, he just absolute doofus. Like there's no way this dude belongs on the court, but and he would get going and he could rip threes on you. He could score in the mid range. He could take you on the post, and he just led that Wisconsin team. They were always while he was there, always one of the best teams in the country. They eventually lost in the championship to Duke, but they knocked off that Kentucky team that was 38-0 in the Final Four. I remember watching that game out. I was out in Vegas on spring break with my family. Actually,
Whoa.
we were in a yeah. I was young, but we were in a big hotel sports bar when that game was on, and that was just one of the most awesome college games. And Kaminsky definitely led them through that, and
I
he'll
was
be one of those people I always remember. Doesn't like look like he belongs on a basketball court, but definitely one of the better college players of my lifetime.
I think he entered as a 3-star prospect.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
he definitely.
definitely a big time unheralded prospect. Guys like that always go to Wisconsin. Like if you look at what's his name, like Decker and Bronson Koenig, guys like
Yeah,
that. But
who else was on that team? Hey, what was his name? Hayes. He was really
Nigel
good
Hayes,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, Nigel
Yeah.
Hayes. Yeah. That was a great team.
Who would you
Um,
rank as your number 5 guy?
I have. I really went back and forth with this. I struggled with this. There's so many great players, and there's so many great guards. I don't know if you realize that,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that's why I wanted to throw in Kaminsky just to kind of give there's some
yeah,
guards I might have picked over him, but I kind of wanted to throw in a big man.
yeah. So my number 5 is Buddy Hield. Uh, I just he played 4 years. Yeah, National Player of the Year. Um, I don't know if you remember the game against Kansas. It was like one of the best college games I've ever watched.
Yeah.
Probably one of the best like sports games I've ever watched in my life. But he had 46. Um, that was really cool. They they did lose the game, yeah, and the Kansas crowd, who is always quite the crowd, gave him a standing ovation, and I just thought that was like an unbelievable amount of respect.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I believe he was National Player of the Year, but he did get blown out by Nova that year.
Yeah,
But
in the Final Four.
yeah, but yeah, he was just a great player and a great NBA player now.
All right, nice. For my 4th ranked player, I got Jalen Brunson. Arguably the most decorated player of the past decade in college basketball, winning 2 national titles with Villanova in a 3-year span. He kind of took over for Arcidiacono after he played with him for his freshman year, but he took over for him full time his sophomore year and junior year, and where he was the captain of that team, led them to a national title in 2016, or no,
Yeah,
excuse me, 2018. But he's just a great guard. He's one of those players you always watched, or just like this guy knows how to run the team. He's a great point guard. He can shoot. And one of the things that impressed me most about him in college was, and you see Gillespie doing it now. Villanova likes
post.
to post up his
Yeah,
guards, yeah. And he was definitely a dynamic player down there too. When it came to either scoring, he would get double teamed sometimes, find people out of that. He's a great passer. He was just a great college point guard and one of those guys who you thought would play in the NBA for 10 to 12 years as a solid backup, and he's definitely looking like that now. He's averaging like 8 or 9 points per game for Dallas. He's backing up Luka, so
do you think he
he's
could
gonna
start
have a
somewhere?
role for a while. Yeah, I definitely think he could be a point guard on a starting level point guard on a team, but I think definitely fitting him into like a backup role is what he's meant for long term.
He would be perfect for the Sixers.
Yeah, yeah, like we were saying about Winston. That's kind of what Brunson and
Yeah,
Winston are very similar
yeah,
players.
yeah,
Jalen Brunson just got more. He's got more hardware to him.
yeah. Um, so I on my top 5 list, I struggle with this one because I had to think that there was better like players, but if you look at his numbers, Doug McBuckets,
Dougie
um,
McBuckets.
he is he's a top 5 all time leading scorer ever. Um,
Yeah,
3-time All American. The only other player in college basketball to do that was Patrick Ewing. Um, he's made a decent career in the NBA, just being a shooter, which I expected, but
hmm
unbelievable college career. I don't remember how far they went in the tournaments, but not.
yeah. He never made a Final Four run.
Yeah, definitely not. But just an unbelievable player, unbelievable shooter. Um, under his dad at Creighton, which was also a cool story.
hmm
So yeah, that was my number 4 player.
All right, my third one. You already touched on him earlier. I had Buddy Hield as well. Just when you think of him, I just thought of shooting, especially his last year and his junior year as well. His last 2 years of college, he just lit it up in the Big 12, and his senior year was something special. He'd shoot it from all over the place. He could score. And like you said earlier, every team respected him. They knew. All right, if we want to win this game, we got to shut down Buddy Hield, and that's what Nova did, and that's why one of the reasons why they blew him out because he made that team go. Like
Yeah,
it's not like Brunson, who had DiVincenzo, Bridges, Spellman, heart, like all those like good guys around him. Buddy Hield was kind of just out there on his own. Sure, he had a few guys. I remember one of the guys. I think his last name was Lattimore. He was always a good player for them, but
Yeah.
Oklahoma never really had anyone great. I mean, Trey Young came in, but that was after Hield's time.
Yeah, I remember Oklahoma they just bombed threes.
Yeah,
That was their game
running
plan.
down.
I remember Buddy was so good. They would often miss threes. They would get offensive rebounds, and Buddy would sprint to the corner, sprint to a wing, and right back to him another three. And that's it. That was their bread and
He's
butter.
a fun player to watch.
Yeah, I love Buddy Hield. I would love him on the Sixers as well. But so my third ranked player in the last 10 years is Jimmer. He's a lot like Doug McDermott. He played at BYU. Everyone knows him. Just some unbelievable performances. I'm looking at the numbers. 3 40-point games. He had a 52-point performance. He led BYU's Sweet 16. Made the tournament all 4 years. It's tough at a school like BYU.
Yeah.
And he averaged 29 in his senior season. Yeah,
it's pretty
crazy. Yeah, so that was my third ranked player.
All right. For my second ranked player, I had Evan Turner, who, when the Sixers picked this guy, I thought they were getting a stud. Like I was convinced. Like obviously, I wanted John Wall at 1 because he was a more like clear cut athletic prospect, and after this great year at Kentucky. But like, all right, we'll settle for Evan Turner at 2. I just thought as a wing, he was going to be a great player for the NBA. He was so good at Ohio State. I remember the lasting memory I have him in college was that half-court shot he had in the conference tournament. I want to say it was against Michigan, but I'm not 100% sure.
It was definitely.
Yeah, that half-court buzzer beater to win it was just an awesome shot. And he was just such a dynamic player. He averaged I believe it was 20 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. He could do it all. He's a guy who I'll touch on a little bit later in Denzel Valentine, but his game reminded me of him, where there's just a great all-around guy, great team player, and I thought the Sixers were going to get us future all-star, just a versatile player. But I mean, he's panned out. He's had a nice, decent career in the NBA, but definitely better college career, and that's why I have him ranked as my second best college player.
It was a while ago.
Post 2009.
I forget was he had a decent rookie year, right? Or no?
Yeah, he was all right, but he was never number 2 pick caliber.
Definitely not. No.
And I remember one of the big things with him. He had a broken back, and that was when he was in college, and that's a big injury to overcome. And he came back from that and was still a very dynamic player. He could jump good, and he could shoot the ball. And he was a great rebounder and defender, and that's what stuck out to me most about him. Just one of the more solid players you'll watch all around in college basketball.
Yeah. Yeah, he has had a really long career, even though it's not been great. But
he was a 2012 draft, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be an 8-year career.
And still going.
Yeah.
So So my second pick is Kemba Walker. He's unbelievable player from UConn. He was just so fun to watch during his 2 seasons at UConn. Everyone remembers the step back against Pitt, Big East Championship. And he went from that game and then didn't lose a game in the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, I don't remember what seed they were, but they weren't a great seed. I don't think so.
No.
But just unbelievable performances. Such a fun player to watch. Cardiac Kemba is what they would call him. And just an unbelievable player at UConn and now a great player in the NBA. So he was my second overall player in college.
All right. Yeah, I definitely agree. I didn't include him on my list just because of he kind of had like a short-lived career before he went to the draft. That's why I wanted to keep him off. But I think his run through the Big East tournament and through the NCAA tournament to win the national title, is definitely the most impressive overall run I can remember from a
Yeah,
player. That's something
yeah.
I'll remember for the rest of
They
my life.
they didn't have a great team for sure.
Nah, yeah, he
No.
he willed them. It was kind of like a Buddy Hield type thing, but he
Yeah.
was their guy. They had a few solid pieces, but
Was
they
Jeremy
weren't like a
Lamb?
Duke. Nah, Lamb was later
Was it Shabazz? Shabazz,
with
right?
Shabazz, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so when it was Kemba and he had young Shabazz, very young, and then Jeff Adrian was also on the team who was a
Okay, yeah,
very
yeah.
good
I do
fourth.
remember Jeffrey
And I
Green.
think
Yep.
they had Hashim to beat too, but I mean he was a good college player, but he sucked in
Yeah,
the
that was
NBA. He
yeah,
was
that
just
was
a big guy in the middle, but
big clubs. Yeah.
yeah. My number one pick was Jimmer. You touched on him already, but I think other than LeBron James, I think Jimmer is my favorite basketball player I've ever watched. He was just so fun. He was one of the reasons why I really fell in love with basketball, especially college. Uh, I would try and I remember always when he would play on like ESPN or CBS Sports or something, and it would be like a 10 o'clock, like 10:30 tip, and my dad would be like, "All right, like finish all your homework up. You can watch Jimmer tonight. Like you can stay up and watch the first half." And that would always be something I would look forward to, just because he was so fun. He was like a pre-Steph Curry kind of,
I
where
was
I
just
mean
gonna say.
Steph was shooting like that in college too, but he was kind of Steph before Steph. Um, just because Jimmer was, I mean, Steph didn't really. He made his name in college, but he didn't really bring that deep shooting to till he got to the NBA. And Jimmer was, he kind of set that tone as the premier basketball like outside shooter in the world at the time. And he was just always so fun. Pull up from anywhere. He could score at the rim too. And he had led that BYU team, which was really good. He had them on some runs. I remember I was watching a show on TV today where they were talking about when he played Kawhi in college, and they were a higher ranked. San Diego State was a higher ranked team than him, and BYU, and Jimmer took them to school, and he was just a
Yeah,
national sensation. Kind of reminded me of like a Linsanity type thing too, with how
definitely.
hype it all got. But Jimmer is definitely my favorite player to watch college basketball in my lifetime.
It really was. It was a lot like Steph in that tournament too.
hmm Yeah.
Um, just the range and just so fun to watch.
hmm
So my number one player, you mentioned him. I don't think that I'm being biased because I'm a Nova fan. I think that Jalen Brunson is the best college player that in the last 10 years. Um, he he will be overlooked because he wasn't like the other players. He wasn't going to be a great NBA player. Wasn't like Jim
Stud
shooting like from
scorer.
Jim at range, but
Yeah.
just an unbelievable player. His resume is ridiculous. I don't think there's anyone that we mentioned that has two national titles and the Naismith Player of the Year award.
Uh,
Um, I thought that even his freshman year, where he started with Ryan, I think that he was just as big a role as Ryan was. I mean, Ryan
yeah.
was obviously the guy and he was the leader, but I felt that he was just as important. And then obviously the um, his next year, he was the guy. So
Yeah.
um, just an unbelievable player. I don't think I'm being biased, but I
Yeah.
understand why people would think that. But
He's definitely a decorated player.
yeah,
All right, that rounds out both of our top fives. I threw on two honorable mentions as well. I mentioned this guy a little bit earlier, Denzel Valentine. He's just such a solid all-around player. He could do everything.
mm-hmm.
He was the glue for Tom Izzo's team. He never got it done, making it all the way to the national title. But he was just one of the best overall college basketball players I can remember when it comes to scoring, defending. I thought he was going to be kind of like what I said with Evan Turner, going to be a very solid NBA player. He hasn't really panned out yet. There's still a little bit of time for him to develop, but
Where
he's
did he get
he's
drafted?
He's playing with the Bulls. Or he got drafted by the Bulls. I don't know if he's
No,
still
like
there.
how
Oh,
early?
I think it was about mid first round,
Yeah, that's what I
maybe
thought.
late lottery. But Denzel Valentine he was a glue guy, but he was a more skilled glue guy. And when I think of Michigan State basketball, I think of him and Cassius Winston for at least the past 10 years, and I would put Denzel a little ahead of Cassius. And Michigan State has been just such a great program, and I think it's a big testament to him for keeping that tradition going. And the
Yeah,
other guy I threw on my list for honorable mention was Miles Powell. Talked about him earlier. Getting to see him up close, the things he can do, and the way he carries himself, and he definitely was the glue of his team as well. He led them. I respect. He came into Seton Hall as an underrated guy. He was a chubby kid and he filled himself out. He got in good shape and he became probably Seton Hall's best all-time player. I know a lot of people are calling for his jersey to be retired there, and I'm upset we got robbed of not being able to see him in the Big East tournament and the NCAA tournament one more time. But he's one of those guys these past 10 years who I'll always remember as one of the better players, especially being like a Big East fan like I am, always watching Villanova and keeping up with the league. I kind of became a Seton Hall fan over the years too, and I would always find myself rooting for him. And I think he's a great player who's going to help out an NBA team in the near distant future.
yeah. I don't know if you've noticed this. We're watching the Big East. I feel like Seton Hall always has great guards,
Yeah.
just like real tough guards that give like other teams problems. And Miles was the best of them all. So
hmm
yeah, he could come back, right?
Nah, he's a senior.
No, I thought with the
They banned that. So for
yeah, yeah, yeah.
spring athletes, you can come back, but
Oh
winter they're
yeah,
not
yeah, it was
allowing
just the
it.
spring athletes. Yeah, yeah, my
Uh
fault,
huh.
my fault. Um, yeah. So I have two players just for honorable mentions. This guy was one of my favorite college players of all time. Trey Burke. He was a little disappointed with the Sixers this year, but um, he only played 2 seasons. But Player of the Year. Everyone remembers the shot he had against Kansas.
hmm
That was one of my favorite games I've ever watched. That was Steph Jim Range, but
Yeah.
just unbelievable player. Kind of carried that team. They had a great team, but he was the leader. They had a lot. They had a
hmm
couple NBA players on that team actually, but he was the leader. He won the Player
Yeah.
of the
He's
Year.
Stauskas.
Zalskis, Glenn Robinson, I believe.
Hardaway.
Yeah, that was a great team. Um,
Yeah.
but he was the leader of that team for sure.
hmm
Um, um, yeah. So that he's one of my favorite college players ever. I'll always remember that game and that shot. And another player I have on here is Gordon Hayward. Um, I always think about what his like college career would have looked like. Like imagine if he hit that shot against Duke. I just feel
Yeah.
like it would have been
Won the
one of the
title.
most unbelievable shots of all time. He probably would
Uh-huh.
have a different view from the
Yeah.
basketball
From
fans
the
if he hit that
public.
shot.
Yeah.
He's just a great player. That's another team. It's another team that he kind of carried. They
hmm
had great players, but no one is near as good as him. I believe they went to 2 Final Fours, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
hmm
that was a tremendous. They haven't been real close since then. So
Yeah. He's
so yeah, he's
he
one.
I feel like he would be up higher on both of our lists if they would have been playing like in the Big East back then, and he would have been playing
Yeah,
against better teams. But
yeah,
you never really watched Butler because they were in the
yeah,
Horizon League. That you didn't
exactly.
really get to see him. They were in the A10 for that one year. You didn't get to see him that much until it was the tournament time. But that's where he
That's why I
really
wanted to
made
include
his
him
name for himself.
because
Yeah, kind of
yeah,
one of those guys who you wouldn't really think about when you're making this list, but
that Duke
I wanted
game,
to give him some
that Duke
credit.
championship game was on the other day, and he looks like a baby. It's funny.
Yeah,
He,
compared to
yeah,
now.
yeah.
All right, that wraps up all our segments today. But before we head out, I just wanted to get your opinion on one more thing. Who would you have the Eagles pick in the first round if the draft was today?
Okay. Definitely a receiver. Um, if there's any way we can trade up, I doubt it. Um, My favorite, I mean, obviously Judy. We couldn't trade up that far, but I love CeeDee Lamb. And then I guess Justin Jefferson if we have to stay back, but I don't even know if we'll be able to do that. I don't know if we'll be there. So
Yeah, I
those are
agree.
my
I
two
think
guys.
the receivers, those top receivers, will be off the board, and I don't know if we'd be willing to trade up that high to get them.
Yeah,
But I would like, as of right
definitely
now, I
wishful
would like
thinking.
Jefferson. Yeah, I would
Yeah,
like Jefferson too. But like we were saying earlier, when I was saying in the NFL you win from within, and it wouldn't surprise me if Howie tried to take a defensive end and then get maybe a receiver in the second and like the fourth round. But
yeah,
like I feel like you have to know that if you're gonna win in this league, you're gonna need to surround Wentz with some guys.
yeah. It's at least one.
Philly will burn down if they don't take a receiver at the first
Yeah,
round.
I can't stand that Alshon's still on the team, but
Yeah,
that's neither
well,
here nor there.
maybe he gets moved in the draft too. Who knows?
I
They
don't think
might
anyone
be.
would want him, but
Yeah, they just might be waiting or they might cut him after the draft to just make sure that they get a guy that they feel can play right
yeah,
away.
yeah, I could definitely see that.
All right, but that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Beef Up Front podcast. I want to thank Brendan for joining me, and thank you guys for listening. If
Yeah,
you like
thanks
what
for
you
having.
see, just like the post, subscribe, and share it out to your friends. Thanks again, guys, and talk to you soon.